This is the Comedy Kiosk, podcast by Monday and Munoz. Please welcome Monday and Munoz.
Hello, welcome to the Comedy Kiosk, a podcast in which we discuss news, opinions, and ideas about comedy. I'm David Munoz.
And I'm Igor Monday.
And today's discussion is aging and outdated comedy. The reason why we're discussing this is because of you, Igor. Can you explain what it is that made you start thinking about comedy that has aged or is considered now outdated?
Just checking my jokes. From a few years back, and I'm like, I can't joke about this anymore.
I thought you saw maybe my latest show and you was like, my God, that is so outdated and aged. Dear God, man, give up. You're too old to do comedy.
Not the show, but the performer. But yeah, no, actually, I kind of accidentally stumbled upon an article about the well-known and well-beloved TV show sitcom Friends from the kind of mid-90s that aired from mid-90s to, let's say, early noughties, like 2004, I think, was the last season. And it was actually an article that is titled 10 Ways Friends Aged Poorly. So it kind of outlines 10 main points in which kind of what was okay then isn't okay anymore. And mostly it's about the humor and the comedy that was used to kind of, as a punchline then that probably wouldn't be okay or wouldn't fly today. And as a huge kind of fan and lover of Friends, I immediately went through this article, read it, and I was like, okay, this sounds like something. Well, first of all, have you seen Friends?
Yeah, I've caught a few episodes. I will admit, I was not the avid watcher when it came out, because that was my era. Like, I was a teenager when Friends was being shown. So, that pretty much when I saw Friends, it was like watching my sister and her friends, like, if you know what I mean. Like, it was her age group who was like 9 years older than me, but they were in their 20s, just like the characters. They were trying to find their way through life. So, it was kind of, anyway. But I wasn't a big watcher of the show as such, but I did watch episodes when I happened to come across it, It was all right. It was, it was pretty much comedy of the era.
Yeah,
it was good for its time.
I agree that I don't think it was good for its time. I think it's a kind of a timeless classic, even though this article disagrees and kind of tries to point out some minuses and mistakes and everything that kind of shouldn't fly today. But I still think that it's kind of... It's a sitcom that defined so many sitcoms to come after that, with this kind of friend-centric setting, and that the idea that in a big city it doesn't have to be about a family like many sitcoms before that, like Full House or something like this, Married with Children or Roseanne or whatever. Sitcoms were mostly about family life, but this one was the first one about a group of friends can also be a family, right? And then we had How I Met Your Mother, and we had The Big Bang Theory, and we had, New Girl, and so on. So it kind of started the trend. But I, as a big fan of Friends, and I've seen Friends, I think, like 5-6 times, kind of from start to finish, all the seasons, all episodes.
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, it's I do
okay, so you were a fan.
Yeah,
I'm the non-fan who
I wasn't a fan,
appreciated it.
to be honest, when it was airing, kind of, because I think then I was just too young. I think I was maybe 10, 12, 15, doesn't matter, when they were like 28, 29, 30. So, it just seemed like a bunch of older people to me, living their older people lives, like, oh, who will I marry? Oh, I got fired. I'm like, I don't relate, but then, like,
what's a job?
Yeah, what's a job? What's marriage? What's anything that's not candy?
What's a girl?
What's a girl?
What's a girl? I just can I touch one? That's what your preoccupation was probably at that point.
At 10? No, but
oh, okay. Still Transformers.
Yeah, I was a late bloomer in that sense. Yes, I didn't touch girls at 10, and I still don't touch girls. I mean, I touch female women with their approval and consent, but never mind.
Of course.
So, but I did start watching it, I think, for the first time properly, kind of from start to finish at maybe 24, 25, and that's the age that they start.
When you could relate.
Yeah, that's the age that they start in the series. So, I was like, that's why this is funny or relatable, because, jobs and women, I get it now. So, and I know many people who kind of watched Friends religiously, like they would know every scene or every quote, and still, for example, in Croatian TV, it's kind of, you turn on TV in the middle of the day during a work day, and your chances are kind of 50-50 it's going to be Friends on TV.
Yeah.
So it's quite popular to this day. Actually, I heard this fact somewhere that it's so kind of popular and well received and watched around the world that there is no minute that Friends isn't airing somewhere in some country, on some TV channel, so that there is no like single minute when it's not airing on some TV channel in some country. But yeah. So the article is quite negative though, and it's kind of comparing Friends, which is now a 30-year-old series basically, to modern kind of standards and so on. So through this article, I thought that we could discuss this, comedy and again, not expiration date, but kind of can comedy become outdated? Does it can it age poorly, as they are trying to kind of say in this article that Friends have? And is it really something that, we should be now going back and trying to correct what was funny then, So I thought we could just run through this article. There are 10 points. On each point, say what we think. Do we agree or do we disagree? Why? And compare it to some other maybe examples or cases that are not just Friends, but comedy in general.
Right. Well, and also for the interest of the listener, if you want to also look at this article while we discuss it, if you want to pause this and look for it, it's cbr.com, and literally it's titled 10 Ways Friends Aged Poorly. So just look at it. Now, the thing is, when you sent the article to me and I read through it, I have to say, I agreed with every single point in essence of what they were saying. Like, too many, like there were a lot of jokes about, for example, fat or about gay and things like that, being gay or the way it's seen. And I have to say, I was reading it going, yeah, true. That's true. But the part that I was kind of like, the part that made me kind of a little bit, not confused, but the part that I was a little bit like, well, that's they made the show today. I have to agree. If you were to make this exact same show word for word today, of course it wouldn't fly and it wouldn't be a hit because people would look at it and go, that's not funny. But at the time, it's, through the lens of the era, it was groundbreaking, the stuff they were discussing. Like they touched on topics that were considered taboo, or they tried to a degree normalize it. It didn't mean they normalized it 100%, but they did kind of introduce at least the topic to discussion, or hey, is this a good thing or a bad thing, or at least showing something as being part of life that before may not have been. Now, I will slightly disagree with you earlier on about Friends being well, it was groundbreaking in a way, but it's also cyclical, because the idea of a sitcom of a group of people living together had been done in the 60s and 70s. I think it's like Three's a Crowd, The Odd Couple. There were other sitcoms that were done with people living together who were just friends, perfect strangers, sort of, all this sort of thing. Like there were shows earlier on, or Golden Girls is another good example of a group of women getting together who are kind of like the middle-aged version of Friends, or the late middle-aged version of Friends in a way. And that was a great show too. So I kind of, I don't know. Sometimes I think Friends is put a little bit too much on a pedestal, where I'm like, it was good, but also it wasn't necessarily as groundbreaking, because that was the first thing about this article. Before we even get into the actual topics, was one of the first things this person says is, modern audiences know the sitcom has aged poorly. One of the most iconic sitcoms of the 2000s, the series, which aired for a decade, created certain archetypes and trends that are still alive on television. Okay, the part that I have with this article is they make this broad statement, the statement of fact, without backing it up. There is no evidence. They don't say, such as this or that, which has been taken over by, for example, Big Bang Theory. You, at least, kind of gave examples of shows that obviously stepped off the shoulders of Friends, such as Big Bang Theory, How I Met Your Mother, and things like that. That was great. This article doesn't even bother to do that. Like, doesn't even bother to explain. It just says, it created certain economic trends that are still alive on television. Yeah, but there are other shows that are also doing it beforehand. Which things did they actually do that others didn't? They didn't give an example. So I thought it was kind of lazy writing, in my opinion.
I mean, I'll agree. First of all, like straight off the bat, that the article, I mean, it's not great journalism. It's not
it's a puff piece, let's face it. I think even the writer would be like, hey, I had to do it. It's not a
well-written article, to be honest. And the kind of website itself, I think it is some kind of pop culture, cheap journalism kind of thing. But still,
It's a list pop culture thing, yeah.
But the thing that
Yeah.
I mostly disagree, and you said that you kind of agree that most of those things wouldn't fly today, etc. But I don't agree that they wouldn't fly today. I mean, they wouldn't fly today in Hollywood and kind of in media and with critics and stuff, because today people are like, oh, you can't say that, you can't do that. But people would still find it funny and enjoy it. It's just critics
Yeah.
and
All right.
media would write shit about it because they would be like, oh, you can't joke about this and that, but people still laugh at that, and there are like very, very small number of still existing kind of programs like Family Guy or South Park or something that also started in the 90s, and they have changed as well, they have evolved, but they are still kind of risky, they are still kind of edgy, they still kind of make fun of homosexuality, racism, and so on. They don't make fun of homosexuals. They make fun of, it's a satire. Yeah. They make fun of people who are homophobic, right? But they kind of show it how stupid it is to be homophobic through a character that is homophobic, this kind of stuff. So I think that it would still fly today, just not with kind of the critics and the media that try to, just destroy or cancel everything that is a little bit, not PC or whatever, not 100% politically correct to everyone. But let's go maybe through the list, and then on each point we will see, do we agree, do we disagree, and can it relate to some other kind of stuff outside of Friends. So 10 out of 10, the top thing that, not top thing, like 10th thing on the list that they don't agree with and think that aged poorly is that Susan and Carol, which are a lesbian couple, and one of them is an ex-wife of Ross, who is one of the main characters. Basically, they're the punchline of the jokes in Friends. Basically saying that Friends makes fun of homosexuality, right? But that's just, and they describe it here a bit, but that's just not true.
Well,
for example,
the aim they say is the jokes are usually aimed at the fact that Ross lost to a woman. In a sense, this invalidates Carol's sexuality, as if it only exists to make Ross's life miserable. Or I think it's used, what they're meaning is that it's used to emasculate Ross. That basically, because, he lost to a woman, he's not much of a man. In the Ross character, the whiny kind of guy sort of thing. That's the angle that they go with on this one. What is your thought about that, then?
My thought is that it's a completely, maybe it's written by someone who hasn't seen Friends or who just knows kind of the pop culture of Friends. But basically what happens is that he's married to a woman who then falls in love with another woman, and she leaves him and marries that woman. But she's already pregnant with his child, so that child is brought up with two moms and a dad, basically. And in 1994, to have a kind of family, only like Modern Family 20 years later, we had a situation where two men were bringing up a child and stuff. To have like a lesbian couple bringing up a straight child, that's a child of another man. I mean, that's the kind of, and they're a normal functioning couple. They're lesbians who are not portrayed in some kind of, short hair, tattoos, some kind of brutes, like they're two beautiful women who are just lesbian, they're just gay. It's not their whole life. They're not some kind of, brutes, bikers, tough women, whatever. They're just two normal women who are just gay. That's it. And I think it's the most positive portrayal of homosexuality you can have in like on TV, because there is nothing that says she's a lesbian, therefore, and that something is a punchline. No, it's, if anything, it's a punchline on Ross, because he's the one feeling insecure. He's the one that's kind of, oh my God, my wife of 7 years left me for another woman. But also in real life, I think that's how you would feel. Like, not the fact that she left him for a woman, but that he didn't know, or that he didn't have any idea that she's a lesbian. And that after 7 years of marriage, he finds out in such a way. I think that's the situation that is a joke, not the homosexuality of two characters,
Yeah, no, I see. I agree with you in that sense. Actually, I think, they're portrayed actually quite well. I think the point is, though, that yes, Ross finds it emasculating, the fact that but then, as you point out, that is a very valid point. That's Ross's problem. It's his homophobia, or it's his idea of what is masculinity that's being questioned in a way. that does this make him less of a man or less of, and I think at the end, I never really saw the show too much, but I never saw him as being necessarily a bad dad or anything like that. Like, he's still he tried to be, he was just himself at the end of the day. And like you said, a lot of guys, especially in that era where, yes, having grown up during that period of time, that was generally the slang, like the insult was, what are you, gay or something like that, was that sort of language. And it's not right, but it was used and things like that. And that emasculating feeling that was used against each other amongst even friends, to kind of put each other down or belittle. It was a thing.
I don't think it's even the fact that, because what happens is his wife falls in love with another person, kind of cheats on him, and then they divorce. And I think for any man, it doesn't matter if it's a female or a male that your wife is cheating on you with and leaves you and builds a life with them, you would feel resentful, you would feel hurt, you would feel emasculated maybe, and so on. And in the beginning, he has a really good relationship with his ex-wife. He has a problem with her new wife, but that's, I would have a problem if my wife cheated on me with a man and then married that man. So yeah, I don't think, and in the end, their kind of conclusion is, this says a lot about what the main characters think of LGBTQ people. That's not what they, it's never been a joke, I think, kind of, haha, they are gay. No, it was kind of like, haha, you idiot, your wife left you for another person, like this kind of stuff. Or some situations where, like, oh, I have two mommies. But yes, you do, and a daddy. So that's why it can create a funny situation. But, don't ignore it then. Don't put only straight characters in the show, so there is nothing offensive to anyone, So
yeah, and this is just it. This is where France, especially for the era, but even now, it, like you were saying, it's portrayed well. So in that case, actually, it's doing, for the 90s, that was kind of groundbreaking to show just a normal relationship that they were having and everything like that, for what it is. So actually, if anything, that would still hold up greatly. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Point number 9, there are too many jokes about Friends' characters' physical appearances. Here they're pointing out that Monica used to be fat, or that, Rachel for getting a nose job, or Janice's laugh, whoever the hell Janice is. But nonetheless, they're basically saying this is low-hanging fruit, jokes about the characters' appearances, especially when it comes to Monica being overweight when she was younger. So, they're basically, body positivity was not a thing. Thoughts about that?
Well, again, I think that it wouldn't be allowed today on TV or in cinemas or whatever, because, people like the critics and the media would just kind of tear apart whoever like wrote it or directed it or anything, because they would be like, no, that's not acceptable. But in real life, if my friend was fat 20 years ago and now they're good looking hot person, I would tease them and joke about the time they were fat. And I think everyone
That's a good
would.
friend.
But everyone would. That's how people react. Like, why would you just, if my friend, and one of our friends, I won't name the person now, but like we both know him, he was chubby and even fat for a majority of his like childhood and stuff, and I tease him about it. I joke, I'm like, now you're a handsome, like great looking kind of successful man, but remember when you were like a chubby, like nobody, like it's kind of, it's not, but first of all, that really he was, I'm not making shit up. Second of all, it's in the past, the man obviously bettered himself. Third of all, why is that such a problem? Like joking about your friends, like with my friends, we constantly roast each other about anything, about weight, about, I have a bald friend. How many times did we tell him, oh my God, you're so bald? All the time. Like, it's kind of what, I don't think, so now we can't say that someone's bald on TV. We have to pretend that they have hair, even though they don't. You know what I mean? Like, what's the point of that?
Yeah. I mean, but then the thing is, the person, the audience watching it might be a little bit too sensitive. I mean, on this one, I would have to say that I see where they're coming from in the sense of someone who is overweight, such as maybe a young person, where they make fun of Monica being younger and overweight, might hurt their feelings. I do get that at all. But then in that case, maybe focus on them getting, like, fixing themselves and what they did. But, I mean, at the same time, Jesus, I mean, that was the 90s also a lot. I mean, and even as you point out, a lot of people to these days still do it. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm out. My jury's out on that one. I never really watched the show enough to basically if they did it too much or not. But At the same time, I mean, it is what it is. Like you were saying, like this person, if he was overweight, well, in a way, by doing that, you're kind of pointing out how different he is now that he no longer is in this situation. So, yeah. But okay, so that's that point. Number 8, Ross is a nice guy. This is an interesting one. However, on rewatch, it is easy. So basically, Ross is the nice guy, and he eventually gets his happy ending. But however, on a rewatch, it's easy to notice that Ross's attitude wasn't exactly that of a romantic hero. He's a walking red flag, incredibly jealous, often throws tantrums when Rachel interacts with other men, misogynistic. He believes that he's better than other people just because he has a PhD. Well, that's just Ross was a bit of a dick. We always knew he was a bit of a pretentious wanker. That was kind of the point.
That's called a character is like, okay, what do you want? A character that has no like flaws? You know, should there be six friends and they're all perfect people with perfect lives, with no jealousy, with no human emotions, no jealousy, no like, I don't know, attitude, nothing. Why? How is that interesting or funny?
Yeah, but also, actually, the interesting point is, I would actually say that is the issue here. He is the, in quotation marks, the nice guy, but he's not. And there are so many people and so many what we nowadays would call the incels who are like, but I'm a nice guy. I treat women well, but they won't sleep with me. Or she's talking to that guy. Grr. And you're like, well, yeah, because you're not. You're not a nice guy. You think you are, but you're not. You're basically objectifying her. You are... like in that way, you're demanding that she treats you a certain way because you've done something. You're very transactional, and that's a very misogynistic way of thinking. So actually, you are not the nice guy. So if anything, yeah, I always saw him as, you know, the nicer guy was Joey in a way. In my opinion, when I watched the series, it was like Ross was in quotation marks the nice guy, but it's like, but Joey was honest. Like, yeah, he slept around and stuff, but he didn't lead people on. He was very straightforward. Or even Chandler, you know, sarcastic as hell, but you know, in a way, but that was the whole, I thought that was the joke, was that he really wasn't necessarily the nice guy, and he was representing all those nice guys, in quotation marks, who declare themselves to be the nice guy, and in reality it's like, no, you're a whiny little twat.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the point, exactly. Like, Joey is kind of a slutty, easygoing charmer. Chandler
He's a man
is a man whore. Chandler is a
wise ass,
kind of damaged, sarcastic, you know, like a guy who covers his own insecurities with jokes. That's it. And Ross is you know, kind of a well-educated academic
little shit
who is actually like a whiny little, you know, like jealous
incel.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the, you know, those are the characters. You can't complain about the series having a character for being a character. You know, like, I don't get it.
All right, so number 7, Ross's misunderstanding of consent led him to kiss his own sister. I missed that episode, obviously. What the fuck?
Well, this...
I read that, I was like, wait, what happened here?
Let me retell you that episode. And that's the one that I kind of mostly agree with. But it's more... It's, you know, that's the sitcom, the situation kind of, that was written quite poorly. I don't think it's the 90s thing. I think like someone could write a similar scene today. It just wouldn't be right. But basically what happens is there's some kind of house party or whatever. I don't remember exactly. And everyone gets drunk. And he really wants to kiss Rachel at that party. So Rachel gets drunk and goes to sleep. And he kind of finds her and kisses her. But it turns out, because it was dark or because she was covered with some clothes or something, that it wasn't Rachel, it was Monica, like his sister, that he kissed. But I mean, the fact is not that, you know, no one is calling it incest or something. They're calling it kind of lack of consent, because Rachel like fell asleep or whatever, what he thought was Rachel, and he still came to kiss her. But, you know, I agree. That's not something you should... What?
But this is it. That, I mean, okay, so... basically, he goes without the consent, and he ends up kissing his own sister. So that's basically what happens if you don't do things in the correct way. If he had asked for consent, if he had basically gone while she was awake and sober, he would have kissed the right girl. But because he was being, once again, this not actually a nice guy, a bit of an insecure little jerk who's trying to steal a kiss, he got his comeuppance. He kissed his sister.
Yeah, I mean...
that was the comeuppance. That was the karma. That was the retribution, because he was doing it wrong. Actually, because a lot of times, especially in that era, a lot of times that wouldn't have been played that way. You know, in old movies and things like that, guys constantly steal kisses, and it's okay. Usually the girl ends up resisting, and the old 50s and 60s where the woman punches her little fist into his chest as he like literally forces a kiss on her, and then the little punches become chest rubs, and then they end up kissing, and she acquiesces to his desire, and they fall in love. And it's like, fuck off. No, that's wrong. I mean, you watch that, and this was actually a 90s version of saying, you know what, that's wrong. And Ross got his payback. He suffered the consequences. He kissed his own sister, and I bet that Chandler and Joey gave him the most amount of shit for that. And basically, did they know about it? Did they pay him out? Absolutely.
Yeah. It comes up, and that's how they find out that because they're retelling this story, and he believes all this time that he kissed Rachel, and then Monica says like, "Wait a minute, Rachel wasn't there. I fell asleep in that room or something," and they find out, and they're like, this, obviously. So yeah, I agree. That,
exactly.
I mean, it's not showing that consent is okay. It's showing someone who's done a horrible thing and had karma immediately punish him for that. But also, again, it's not something that is glorified in that episode or anything. People are not like, well done, Ross, you kissed a sleeping girl. No, it's even played down, and it's kind of obviously a mistake, So again. Yeah. Obviously I don't approve of what Ross did, but I don't think that such things don't have any place on TV or somewhere. Why? And I'm sure that it happens on every high school party or something, that there is some drunk person trying to start something or force themselves on another drunk person or whatever, and it should be brought to light that it's a bad behavior and that people shouldn't behave like that, So if we're never talking about it, or if we never show it, how are we going to bring it to light? So yeah. But anyways, right. The next one, the next one, number 6, says Friends makes fun of Chandler's drag queen dad. So Chandler's whole kind of storyline is that his parents divorced at kind of early age because his dad was sleeping with a housemaid, I guess, who was a guy. And so since then, his dad kind of moves to Las Vegas and develops this drag queen persona for like shows in Vegas and whatever, and basically is a drag queen, right? So, but again, in 1994,
is it played by Kathleen Turner?
Yes, probably.
Wow.
Think so.
Okay, cool. I had a crush on her when I was younger.
Oh wow, you had a crush on Chandler's drag.
So pretty much,
dad.
I had a crush on. Yes, I did. Apparently, hey, she was a interesting one when she was younger. Yeah,
but. Yeah, I mean, and again, I think the writer of this article and whoever would judge a show for this misunderstood the show, because it's actually kind of about, again, it doesn't matter that his dad cheated with a man. I think it matters that his dad cheated with a housemaid and then left him and his mom to go and perform in Vegas. And that's why they never established like a strong father-son relationship. And of course, like if you at the age of 10, 12 or something, found out that your dad is gay, you found out that your dad is cheating on your mom, they divorce, he leaves, and then he becomes a woman, yes, you would be traumatized by that. No matter how okay or whatever it is to accept your sexuality, whatever, the child would be traumatized by just the situation that happened. And I think that's most of the humor comes from that.
Or at least confused.
Yeah, I mean, and most of when they talk about his dad and stuff, the humor is kind of like, I don't know, I remember one exact joke. He said something like, yeah, my mom would definitely find this guy hot, and my dad would find this guy hot as well. This kind of stuff, like kind of both of my parents like men.
Yeah.
But I mean, if his dad is gay, then yes, he would like this man as well. So I don't see it as a bad thing saying that gay men love men. It's a...
Yeah, but... Yeah, and once again, this is one of those things where it's like, okay, but you have to give it to Friends for even including a drag queen character or a possible trans person or something like that. Like, maybe it wasn't done 100% accurately, but it wasn't, as you're trying to say, it wasn't done too, with bad intentions. I mean, could it have been done better? Maybe it could have been done better. I'm not too sure about how it was done, but at the same time, well done for introducing it, like the gay couple at the beginning, Ross's ex-wife. You're trying to introduce these ideas, like saying these people exist in the world and they're part of our lives. And Chandler, like you're saying, especially this insecure kind of guy who covers everything with like smart-ass remarks, that's how he would deal with it. You know, he would try to take the piss out of it because he's still come to grips with it. And because let's face it, at that point, and this is the thing I think that we always have to remember, society was still, wasn't even coming to grips with it. It's only now really that we're trying to come to grips with it, with laws and things like that. And even now we're bungling through it. I mean, we're not really doing the best cases. We can't even decide the toilet policies yet. No, there is no uniform idea of how it should be dealt with. Like some people think one thing, other people think another. So for even tackling that in the 90s, I've got to say like, oh wow, that's that was a bit unexpected actually. Like I remember something like that and kind of thinking, really? Oh, that's in that program? So in a way it was kind of avant-garde.
Yeah, I agree.
If you ask me.
I mean, it wasn't maybe done in the best possible way, but I think it wasn't tasteless, and I think it wasn't intentionally offensive or something. It was just introducing something new and something that should be, again, I think there should be kind of drag queen or trans or whatever characters on TV. So, yeah. At number 5, the next issue they have with Friends is that Phoebe's life is full of dark details. Basically saying that one of 6 people had a horrible childhood and like youth, you know, like, and that's somehow a problem, like, you know, but basically in the series, she lived on her mother killed herself when she was young. So she was left with her grandma. She lived on the street a bit. She never finished high school. She kind of traveled around just busking and whatever, you know, like being homeless and stuff like this. But you know, what's the issue with this? Not everyone has a perfect life. People have hard lives. And the fact that she's kind of all bubbly and nice and positive in the end, that's just, you know, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, no, the thing is here, it says like, you know, doesn't give any friends context for revelations, is hilarious. However, she went through some heavy stuff, a fact that shouldn't have been left as nothing more than a running gag. Phoebe clearly had a difficult upbringing, but her friends barely acknowledge it. It's a comedy show, all right? This is not Days of Our Fucking Lives. It's a comedy show. Wait, we're supposed to have a moment where she cries and breaks down and has to work her way through those feelings. Then watch a different show. Watch This Is Us, which is an entire show of kids dealing with the fact that their father died while he was still young and then going through that trauma for ages and ages and ages and seasons of this as all these kids and some of them are adopted. Watch that. Watch This Is Us. This is not that kind of show. It's a comedy show. So there's only a limit to how serious you can get before it stops being a comedy show. That was the whole thing about Friends. They did take the piss out of some heavy stuff because it was a way of dealing. It's a character. This is just ridiculous, I thought.
It's like, I mean, first of all, it's kind of this tendency nowadays that everything has to be a dramedy. So, you know, like there's no real comedies anymore. Everything has to have some drama element and we have to know the sad and dark backstory of, but why?
Yeah.
Like the Friends picks up when she's like 26 or something. She lived on the street when she was 15. So 10 years later, why would that constantly be? But there are some plot points actually. I don't know, she meets her father that left her when she was a child, and it's like an emotional story. Like, you know, they don't ignore her past. It's just not, you know, there is no episode where they cry about it. The whole Friends group sits around and cries about it. No, there isn't. But as you say, it's a comedy. Why should they kind of mention it? They acknowledge it actually. They talk about it multiple times. Some plot points are brought from that past, from that story. But yeah, I don't see why that should be, you know, like every season there should be an episode where everyone cries about Phoebe being homeless for a bit. I mean, if she's moved on, then the viewer can move on as well.
Absolutely. All right. So I think we can move on now from that point. I think we can just basically go, what the hell? Like, come on. Now you're just grasping at straws. Okay, now 4 out of 10. This is an interesting one. Friends has several problematic power dynamic relationships. Now, what they're referring to here is apparently, so Ross dated his college student at one point. Rachel had a relationship with a younger assistant, and Monica dated her wealthy boss, Pete. Was this the one that was played by Tom Selleck? Was that Pete, or was that a different one? Because that's another one where she dated a much older guy.
She dated a much older guy that was a friend of her parents, basically.
Yes.
But Pete was, what's his name? The director of Iron Man and Jon
Favreau.
Mandalorian. Yeah, Jon Favreau. Yeah.
Ah, right. Okay, cool. So, okay, no, fair enough. That's it doesn't mean you can't have it in the show. I mean, that is a fair point. I mean, especially in that period of time. Yeah, Ross dating a student. Okay, that is a power dynamic that these days it's still done. I just literally watched. My wife and I have just started a new series called. I think it's called The Sex Lives of College Students or something like that.
Yeah.
It's about 4 girls, and one of the girls is having a relationship with her coach. Sorry if that's a spoiler for anyone there. It's in the first episode. You see it, but and the whole point is that power dynamic, and that it is wrong, and this is being played out throughout the season. We don't know how it's going to resolve, but it's a thing that happens, so why not show it? I don't know how it was resolved in the show. Whether maybe the problem they have with it is that it isn't criticized.
No,
as
but
being
it is. That's
imbalanced.
again the same point as we had with those like previous kind of behaviors as characters. It always they always pay for that, and it always kind of blows up in their face, because how the Ross's relationship with his 20-something-year-old student ends is that he realizes that she's too childish for him. Like, he walks into some kind of water balloon fight they have in her student dorm, and he's like, okay, this is an actual child, I can't date her, and they broke up. How does the relationship with Rachel and her young assistant end? They realize that the work comes between them, and they argue about some work documents, and they realize that work relationships don't work because don't shit where you eat, like the kind of. So it shows you that like workplace romance is wrong. Dating your student won't work out because of the age difference, the stage difference, and so on. The third one, like with Monica and Pete, doesn't work out because he's a like super rich guy who kind of thinks he can buy whatever he wants, and he starts doing ultimate fighting and stuff. So
Right.
it just blows up in their face, and that's what happens in real life. I worked at the university for 7 or 8 years, and I know that some professors and teachers were dating some students. Like, it happens, like it happens.
Yeah.
So it's not.
Yeah.
Why would we hide everything bad in the world that happens?
Well, I think the problem is, as you're saying, that the issue I think maybe this writer has is the fact that, for example, the Ross and the student one, is that he kind of goes, oh, she's too childish, and leaves. I think what they wanted to see was that he was using, and it points out that he was using his position of power to date this girl. But then at the same time, I mean, sometimes it isn't that. Sometimes it's the girl who's infatuated with an older guy. Daddy issues, as you put it in quotation marks, or something like that, or that, they get an infatuation with older men. I mean, it could be the other way around. But yeah, I mean, it does happen, and this is the thing. I think maybe this writer just wanted to see that Ross got more of the blame, if you know what I mean. Like, as in, he gets pointed out for being kind of the pervy old guy who's obviously using his position as a professor to sleep with younger girls. But not
he does.
necessarily. Is that
Literally-
actually the same case all the way?
Literally does. I mean, that whole kind of story arc, I don't know, 5-6 episodes when he's dating that girl, all the other guys are like teasing him and pointing out that like kind of where is it going? What's the future? Like, she's on her like second, third year of uni. You're a 30-something-year-old man who has a child already and wants to settle down. Like, not only teasing him in the sense that like, oh, have you dropped off Emily at the kindergarten or something like this, which is again thing that friends do. Like, friends make fun of friends, but they also kind of have these conversations. Like, well, why are you doing, where is it going, and so on. And he's like, well, we're having fun. She's young, she's fun, she's beautiful, she likes me. Like, and again, don't get me started on how many people I know that are in a dead-end relationship, but they're in it because it's fun currently, or they like the person or whatever. So, I mean, again, it happens in real life.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so let's move on then. Next topic, the third one. So third out of 10. Friends mocked femininity. So, it says a lot of comedies in the 90s. Friends love to make comedic situations based on conventional gender roles. Well, yeah, it was the 90s. Side considers feminine trait. The brand of misogynistic humor is outdated, but in its prime, Friends totally abused this concept. Many of Friends' storylines focus on its male characters' traditionally feminine traits. For example, the fact that Joey starred in a lipstick commercial is a big joke for Chandler. Ross's high-pitched scream is one of his most famous traits. Chandler is known for his preoccupation with emasculation. This pitfall was easily avoided even in the 90s, but it became a part of the show's edge. Well, that was the 90s. I mean, come on. Like I said before, calling someone gay was like the insult to go to, which was wrong, but it was the insult to go through. So Friends was not kind of bucking the trend. If anything, it's just going with the trend of the time. Secondly, I think with Chandler, with emasculation, well, you could say it's probably connected with the fact that his dad was a drag queen. So that sort of thing, like,
Yeah,
that could be
it's
part
showing
of that's why they knew that
people's lives and people's trauma reflects on their personality and life choices. Oh, boo-hoo. Like,
and in a way, his friends being dicks like Ross and Joey could easily know that was a trigger for Chandler. The emasculation thing, and knowing his background would like, this is an easy dig. I mean, if anything, it's just showing sometimes your friends can be the biggest dicks.
Yeah, but I mean, I sometimes this point, it's kind of that the biggest laughs, the biggest punchlines, or whatever, are when a man behaves like a woman and that's not okay, or a woman behaves like a man, or that's not okay. Like there is an episode where Joey buys a female bag and everyone makes fun of him because it's a unisex bag, but it looks like a female bag, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, again, have you ever had a real group of friends? Like if I show up to a drink with my friends wearing a female blouse, my friends will all like roast the shit out of me for wearing a female blouse. Not one of them will be like, good on you, man. You really accept your sexuality. You are brave and strong enough to wear a female blouse. Good on you. And tap me. No, they'll all roast the shit out of me. It doesn't mean they're trying to offend me or insult me or something. That's how friends behave. And then in general, I mean, that's I get the progressive society. People should wear whatever they want. I can wear a dress if I want. I get it. And I can, No one's going to stop me. No one's going to beat me up. No one's going to offend me. But friends will tease me. That's for sure. And then, all this kind of stuff where the gender roles are like reversed or swapped or whatever. It still exists today. It still exists today. But today is kind of glorified that a young, kind of a small, skinny girl can beat up 10 big men in some action movie. And that's okay because women are strong and powerful. But isn't that swapping? Why are you giving a man's traditionally male action hero role to a woman? But you can't give a traditionally female kind of feminine role to a man. And that's offensive then,
I don't know. My opinion on this one is, I don't know. I kind of agree with that. But then that was the thing of the era. It was very much because it was still coming to grips with, LGBT QT rights and everything was still, being kind of really pushed for in the West even. And this is something I want to get to later on at the end for my conclusion. But, for the time, it was the fact that they were showing these guys were maybe into their feminine things or whatever like that or whatever. But, I mean, at the time, that was a big thing of the moment. I like I said before about the insults we used to throw at each other. And that was a thing where you'd be like, what?
Yeah, but
and I have to admit, people are way too obsessed with it. It is of the era where we were kind of obsessed with, oh my God, does this make me look too much like a woman? Does this make me look... Yeah, because in a way, we weren't really fully accepting of it yet. It is true of the era. And you're right. In this day and age, having that happen in the character, now I think the characters would react differently. You would have to write it differently because I think someone like, for example, who was it? Joy was in the ad, was it, for the lipstick?
Yeah.
Was it? So Joy would be like, yeah, so what? Piss off. I got paid. And I don't care. I know how many women have I slept with? How many women have you slept with? And the fact that I wear makeup is going to make me less of like, yeah, get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? Like, it would be done differently this day. For the era, it was done as it was because that was kind of how it was at that time. And it's a snapshot of the time. And this is the thing, like, does it get outdated? Well, yes. But then it is a window into that time. I mean, this is one of the, for example, Agatha Christie novels. Some people's, the big appeal is like, the big mystery and how she resolves it. But actually, one of the big selling points for Agatha Christie novels is because they are a window to that era, to that time frame, and the way people talked and the way they thought and the way they dressed and society. And when you read it, there's a lot of racist stuff in there. And the characters will say some really kind of, obviously this person was stabbed. Must have been an Italian. And you're just like, oh, for fuck's sake. And literally, that isn't Murder in the Orient Express. The fact that this person was stabbed means obviously an Italian. One of the prime suspects is look for an Italian on the train. And it's like, oh my God. But it's just indicative of the way people thought at the time. It's hilarious, actually, when you look back at how stupid it is and how it's like, Jesus, wow, you are so racist. Like, but no one points it out. Well, yes, because that's the way it really was. And that's probably the way that Agatha Christie herself thought, you know?
Yeah,
and the
but
twist was that, oh my God, it wasn't an Italian. Who would have thunk it?
The point of this article, I think maybe you missed the point a bit, because I agree with you, and you keep saying that in the context of the 90s, and like it was fine and it was how everyone was. Yes, but I mean, this is not what's being disputed in this article. It's kind of, has it aged that it shouldn't be shown now? Has the humor, like, you know, is it still funny, or is it now offensive and insulting, and they should be canceled for it? So that's the thing that they're disputing. But I think still that, you know, I don't think that it's not funny or something. I think that, you know, again, because whatever happens in, I don't know, Hollywood is not what happens in the world. Like, you know,
That was my,
like Friends is a show, again, that is shown every minute at some TV channel in the world. Go with a female blouse and walk around Pakistan. Go walk around Iraq.
Exactly.
Go walk around Colombia. You know, like go walk around Zambia, Russia. Yeah, and see that people won't not tease you, but beat you up. You know, like, so it's like Hollywood is not the world, and this is a series that's really, really reached, I think, every home and every house in the world through TV and everything. And so,
you know, and the point that I wanted to make was Friends, to a degree, especially in these sorts of places, is still groundbreaking, because it's showing, for example, the lesbian couple being fine. It's showing that Chandler, a main character, has a drag queen father. And you know, it's showing these things in some way. This is their first thing of seeing it in some way, and taking it in a light way, which is easier to digest, where at first you might laugh at it, but then later on you might go, well, yeah, it's obviously not such a bad thing. And I mean, you know, in some places Friends is still to this day banned because of the content. In some places in the world, Friends is banned, or certain episodes cannot be shown because it's too revolutionary still.
Yeah, because they depict a gay relationship or something like this that is not even legal in those countries. So yeah.
Exactly. And in some places where, for example, a dynamic where you know, Ross is dating a student or something like that, and that's actually wrong, and that, you know, come on, the age difference does play a factor, is, you know, in some places that might still be a revolutionary sort of thing. It's where they kind of go, oh yeah, you know what, my friend dated the professor, and you know what, that was wrong. Or the other way around, my colleague is, or I know of that situation, and yeah, that is wrong. Well, until then, it might have just been what happens. You know, it's just accepted norm. Much older men date younger women, and in some places of the world, that is very much still the norm. You know, so yeah. So anyway, I wanted to use that as the conclusion, but we've managed to say that before points 2 and 1. So if we want to race through points 2 and 1, then shall we?
Let's go.
Number 2, Friends, men think they can control women. My same old argument. It was the 90s. Of course, guys did think of that. They were still, I mean, women were still fighting for equality. They still are to this day. Some guys now still treat women like that. So,
yeah, but that's again, that your argument is valid, but that's not what they're arguing. They're arguing that now it is aged. But I just don't think that this is whatever was the truth in Friends, because one example they give here is that Ross gets angry when he finds out that his younger sister and his best friend from college are dating. I mean, like, I would get upset that my best friend and my sister are dating for almost a year, and they were keeping it secret from me. And, you know, like, and in the end, as soon as he finds out, he gets like happy and hugs them and stuff. He's like, my sister and my best friend. Oh, that's so, you know, like, he doesn't like stop talking to Chandler, like whatever, like, something. So, you know, I don't see that it's like this. Like, yes, they're a bit possessive. Yes, they're a bit jealous. Men are to this day like that. Some men are toxic. Some women are toxic. Yes, that's true. Why would we have a show about 6 people who are perfect? None of them are jealous. None of them are toxic. None of them are possessive. None of them are make mistakes or date someone from work or have a crush on a younger, like something subordinate. Like, you know, so who would that show be about? Just 6 perfect people. Why?
What a boring, unfunny show.
Well, that's...
And in their 20s, you're still discovering shit. You're learning you're making mistakes. That's the whole point of the 20s. For me, like the 20s is like where teenager and adult meet together. You still got all the hormones and the energy of a teenager, and it's starting to kind of solidify into. But in an adult setting, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna fuck up. Come on, like this is ridiculous.
and that's why
I completely agree. This is
most recent TV, like in the last 2-3 years, is mostly trash and it's mostly mediocre, boring shit because they are too careful and too just bleh. But
right.
yeah.
So the number one point, the final point, it's the one that always gets brought up, and I think it's a fair statement. I completely agree with it. There's barely any diversity on Friends. Yes, it is 3 girls, 3 guys, all of them white, European background. Absolutely, because it was made in the 90s, and
again, I don't think that this is a problem. We always had we had a sitcom about white family, we had a sitcom about black family, like we had Full House and we had Cosby Show, right?
Yeah.
There was barely any diversity on Cosby Show. There were no white characters, but that's fine. They popped in, but some other.
But I'm sure black people or whatever popped into.
Yeah, they did. They dated people of different kind of backgrounds and nationalities, ethnicities. They had colleagues that were different. Like they had, but the main kind of group of friends, and obviously their families, because it's mostly about that. It's Monica's and Ross's parents can be black. It just wouldn't make sense. But as I'm not some kind of statistician or whatever, but as I know, and maybe I'm wrong, you can Google that at home, or we will Google it after the show, but still something like 75% of Americans are white. So
I think it's actually gone down.
Maybe it's gone down, but in the 90s it was
down. I think
definitely like that, maybe even higher. But actually, let me do a quick search.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But the thing is, I've read articles before, other articles where they discussed that that if it was to be actually for New York, because if you look at the dynamics of the cultural makeup of New York, it's also a very diverse place. And they said, statistically speaking, there should have been 1 or 2 minorities within a group of 6 people, statistically speaking.
Statistically speaking, but you don't,
it wasn't always the case.
No,
True.
It wasn't always the case, but also there is much more kind of sense and logic if there's a group of 6 Hispanic friends and there's a separate group of 6 white friends, then that in every group of friends there is 2 Hispanics, 2 African Americans, 2 white, and 2 Asians. It's much more logical that 6 Hispanic people would be friends and 6 white people would be friends, just because of they would grow up in the same neighborhood, they would go to the same school, something, communities, cultures, that's how, especially since I think 3 or 4 characters here are also Jewish, Jewish people are always well connected and the community is strong, etc. So, now it's 60% of the US is white, Latin Americans around 18%, and African Americans around 12%. And that's now. So I think 30 years ago. Yeah. So to have 6 friends that are all white is completely reasonable to me. If you go to any diverse country, go to UK, go to Germany, go to France, you easily find a group of friends that are 6 white people. It's not a bad thing to have a group of friends that is not racially diverse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also, it would allow you that lens of seeing it, okay, from their perspective, other cultural groups, and maybe them realizing maybe some of the stereotypes they have. It all depends on how it's played, how it's written, of course. And I think they did do that. As you said, they dated people from other backgrounds that weren't members of their group, they're part of their general makeup, and they probably had episodes, I don't know, but if they dated someone from another cultural group, were there misunderstandings or they put their foot in it and stuff like that? Do you remember?
Not really. It was just Ross dates an Asian American girl, that's it. No one acknowledges that she's Asian American or anything, as you shouldn't in real life. You shouldn't be like, hey Ross, does your girlfriend like rice? It's just, it would be wrong if they did acknowledge it. I think if they just they have a neighbor that's African American, they have a this and that. Why would these people be representing anything different than just New Yorkers? And I think that's fine. But the fact that one group of friends can be 6 people of the same ethnicity and race, I think that's fine. Some group of people will be just 5 African Americans and 1 Latino, also fine. Like it's just maybe the question, why don't those groups get airtime? That's maybe another question, like why there is less TV shows about the different groups of friends, but this one particular group of friends, why not?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, we have had those, and some of them have been very popular. Like we have Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, The Cosby Show, and Blackish. There was that. I never really watched it, but from what I gathered, I saw 1 or 2 episodes, and it's sort of like building on that Cosby sort of like formula of a family and stuff like that. But I mean, and now there are more shows coming out where it might be like Asian centric or Latino centric. There was one with a family, and one of them owns like a taco shop or something like that, that sort of thing. But these shows are coming out more and more. Never Have I Ever. Love that show with the Indian family, written by Mindy Kaling. I think it's created by her and stuff. Absolutely cool. My wife and I love watching that. And it's interesting because you see another culture. And actually, if anything, that's why it's so great, because it is a predominantly Indian background. But there are other kids from other backgrounds, because she goes to a high school, obviously. So they're interacting. And one kid, the one that she has a hots with, he's half Japanese, half Caucasian sort of thing. Another guy she has a thing for is this Jewish kid and whatever. But also the pressures of the Indian background, and like maybe them wanting to, like, trying to push the cousin to marry an Indian boy and stuff like that, and her not wanting to fulfill that role anymore. That's what I mean. It's interesting, though, to see it from another perspective. Like, that's why I like the show, because it is very Indian-centric. It's like, oh, okay, cool. So, that's how it's seen, maybe, and things like that. So I think, you are going to get these different groups. And I think the only difference is, like you said, the problem is not necessarily that it's 6 white or European background people. It's the fact of, well, we should have more shows showing all the other cultural perspectives, and they should be popular as well. And if they're not popular, the question is, why not? Is it us as an audience that's then having a problem? But I think we are expanding. We are getting more of these shows, and people are watching them. They are becoming successful and popular, because I think as time goes, we are becoming more curious as to wanting to see other cultures and wanting to see other things, because we are becoming more global. But the conclusion, I think, at the end is, as you were saying before, you were talking about, I was bringing up the point that for its era, it was very well written, and actually it was very groundbreaking. You were saying that it still holds up to this day, that these jokes still hold up, and even these problematic issues are still relevant. And I would agree, because, as we've both pointed out earlier, this show is still being shown around the world, and around the world, well, the Western world and its views are a small portion of the real world. And I think this is something that needs to be remembered, that even to this day, Friends is still a groundbreaking show in many parts of the world. It is still banned in many parts of the world, or episodes are not shown because of showing gay relationships or showing transgender people. And these are things that when those people in those countries do see it, because they either illegally watch it or download it, it is bringing into their lives a different perspective, that because their culture is probably still back in, who knows, the 70s or something. So, our equivalent, for example, for social awareness, if you want to put it that way. So I think actually, you're right. I mean, and the problem with this article, these sorts of articles, and I think with these sorts of things, is they're written by, obviously, an American author who has written it for an American audience, which is fine. It's perfectly fine. But the moment you stick it on the internet, it now becomes an international article. And I think this is something that a lot of people are forgetting.
I think it's an author sitting in Starbucks somewhere in like LA or whatever, writing this article, that doesn't really understand real life, because while Hollywood is trying to push this idea of equality, diversity, and everything, and again, I agree that it should exist, but not like by force, and you shouldn't like kind of spoon feed people this, like people should all agree and accept that it's fine to have a black superhero, and that is fine. It should be encouraged, and that's normal, but it shouldn't be that like all this kind of Hollywood stuff in the last few years, that it's kind of just made for the purpose of that. It has no other message or no other content or no other like anything behind that, just the message that they're trying to send. So I think that, this kind of article is written by the kind of people, and probably read by the kind of people that are some kind of utopian idealists who say like, okay, now I wrote this article, I fixed Friends. But I don't think that, that's the real issue, that Friends exists and it's still a funny TV series.
I would have to disagree with the point of the Hollywood or whatever pushing these agendas or these ideas. I don't think they give a shit. I mean, honestly, I do not think producers or studios or anything give a crap about diversity. What they care about is the money and what appeals to audiences. And what they're thinking is what appeals to audiences. And in those days, certain things appealed more to the general audience, or they factored in a certain marketing group. For them, it's all about marketing. It's about groups and getting more bang for your dollar. I don't think they give a crap about agendas. At the end of the day, I think this is a misconception, like this whole cancel culture thing. I disagree. I don't think they really care about. I don't think these bigwigs produce. I mean, let's face it, most of them are friggin' middle-aged, old guys older than us, for Christ's sakes, older than me, white guys who are running these studios and things like that. They don't give a crap about any of these issues. But they do care about is what sells and what pushes this agenda. What makes them the dollar. And if it means pushing a certain idea or showing a certain thing on a program, then they'll do it because they think it's popular, not because they think it's the right thing to do. It's the same reason why, for example, they cancelled James Gunn from the third Guardians of the Galaxy, because it was a knee-jerk reaction because they thought, oh, the people don't like him now because of what was found out on his Twitter feed ages ago. So we have to cancel him because he's no longer profitable. It wasn't that they disagreed with what he said. I don't think they even read those tweets that he wrote. They couldn't give a shit. But when they realized the backlash from fans and they realized, oh, they actually don't care. And it turns out he already apologized and they accept it. And actually, he's still got a massive following. They quickly rehired him. That was the whole point. At the end of the day, he had nothing to do with the actual agenda. I don't think this whole cancel culture or woke culture, I don't think it's being pushed by actual real feelings, except for the people who might write things, story writers or things like that, or just the audience members. At the end, it all comes down to money. And what I'm mentioning is what I think is that internationally speaking, like I said, once this article goes international, the problem is that, yes, the majority of the world is not thinking the same way as certain groups. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't. It's just the reality of it. And in some places, Friends is still very much a relevant thing. Maybe us watching it now, we can look back and go, all right, some of it is a little bit outdated, or those jokes don't work if you were to make the show right now fresh, released it as is. But then, yeah, that's why new shows are being created all the time. That's why even if you were to do a remake of Friends, which I hope they never do, because just leave it for what it is. It was great, and it still is great. But if you were to remake it, you could not do the exact same scripts anymore. You'd have to update it.
Yeah, but I think that's the kind of biggest problem is I think that for the 99% of the world, it's still as funny, as relevant, and not aged or outdated. It's just that there is that one layer of Hollywood that thinks that they can kind of, by being that, as you said, like, it's not about the agenda, it's about the money, but it's also they're slowly coming to realize that, like, just this fad of this cancel culture and stuff, it's dying out, and what people really care about is a good director that can make a good movie, not what he tweeted 15 years ago. Good comedian that can host Oscars, not get canceled for what he tweeted 20 years ago and apologize 10 times for it, and this kind of stuff. It's just media hype. It's just like Hollywood BS, but real people don't really think that or want that in their like content that they're consuming. They want just good content. So if Friends has good jokes and makes you laugh, I mean, I know one of the biggest Friends fans that I know is gay and never seen anything wrong with the gay characters in Friends. And I'm not sure that the person who wrote this article, what is their sexual orientation, what is their gender, sexuality, whatever pronouns. But, you can't be the defender of everyone. It's just let the people decide. And by the sheer popularity of this show to this day, how kind of popular, well-loved, aired around the world it is, I would say that people still find it funny and relevant. So I would say that it's not aged and outdated at all. That's my conclusion.
Yeah. And the other thing is, even if you are, and I mean, there are a few times where I would see certain things, and I read an article recently about Buffy, a very similar article about how badly it's aged and some of the controversial dynamics like Angel and Buffy and the relationship there was really creepy. And absolutely, but I remember watching it at the time and cringing at the time of its release in the 90s going, oh my God, this is a 300-year-old guy who's dating a 16-year-old. Why do vampires keep doing this? Twilight is creepy as fuck. I mean, come on, Edward. Yeah. How many hundred years old you're going out with Belle? You are a sick freak, you know? Team Jacob or whatever the fuck the werewolf was called, you know? For Christ's sakes, at least they were the same age. Yes, he shed hair like, you know, well, like a werewolf, but god damn it, they were the same age. You know, Edward, you are a creepy motherfucker. Yet, hugely popular book because it is a thing, and going out with older guys, regardless, is still a thing, you know, that a lot of people fantasize about and all the rest. And these things are still things that should be talked about on shows and shown. It's just up to how you manage it. And at the end, yes, like you said, the people vote and decide to watch it or not. And unfortunately, people decided to watch Twilight. I don't get it. Why, people? Grow up. Anyway, Anne Rice is much better.
Well, most of those have grown up since then. Luckily, it was like teenage girls 10, 15 years ago, and now they have grown up. But yeah, I think that's kind of our opinion on this article. Let us know what you think in the comments, or reach out to us using any of the social media that we have, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you want to cancel us for us agreeing and liking Friends, you can do that as well. Any PR is good PR for us.
Absolutely. And we accept all criticism, and maybe you can bring up a point that if it's, you know, we'll bring it up on the show in a future episode. We can say, look, someone else brought up this point, and we can agree or disagree with it. We can give our 2 cents or whatever. But, you know, every opinion is valid. So fine, as long as it's constructive, you know, as long as you give a reason why and not just, you suck. Okay, but why?
As long as you make us popular by tagging us in the same post as Friends producers and writers and whatever, then it's okay. You can complain about us and you can try to get us canceled. But thank you so much for listening to this episode. And I've been Igor Monday.
And I've been David Munoz.
Goodbye.
Good night. Ciao.